This analysis does not establish a causal effect. It identifies associations only. Here's why that's a very good answer, because the wrong analyst might, use these results and then, make causal statements about the data when in fact a causal statement cannot be made. Maybe you could ask, can you use like instrumental variables to establish causal effect? What would the model do? Okay, guides further analysis, right? You don't even know what times you don't even know what to look at, and there's like this brain doing the thinking work for you, the heavy lifting. Yeah. So strategy is feasible in this data set, 3 children, but the credibility of any causal claim still depends on the untestable assumptions, especially the exclusion restriction. Yeah. So it knows what IV regression is. So we want to use stage relationship is strong enough for IV use. Fair enough. And it's differ sharply from OLS estimates. Aha. See. So here's what's interesting. The purpose of this exercise, in part, was to show where the OLS regression failed, right? Because it can reasonably be argued that fertility in this data set is the endogenous variable, right? So it makes no sense to have an OLS regression. So look, it notes that IV estimates differ sharply from OLS estimates. That is the main signal that the endogeneity matters here, right? Because if it wasn't endogeneity, then the OLS and this method would, the OLS regression and this method would provide similar estimates. Yeah, absolutely. And it's also telling me where even the IV estimate is likely to be unreliable, right? It assumes, certain untestable assumptions. And that's true. Those things can only be argued. You can't test using the data. And it seems to understand that through channels other than family size. Yeah, reasonable. Fertility and labor supply cannot be fully verified. Yes, because this is a snapshot of fertility regimes. So do you remember when you asked me this question, using social science data and these methods, right? These general scientific methods to study this social science phenomenon, right? You asked the appropriateness of applying these methods to this data. And I answered basically from a point of generalizability, meaning the results may not carry to other cohort settings or fertility regimes, right? Meaning neither I wouldn't use the results of the study for interpretation in a broad set of senses, and neither would your model. Like, it's telling you that it's not generalized, which is good. That's good. I'm impressed for sure. And this is going to be interesting because I have no prior experience working with this data, right? So it would be, so there's like 2 use cases, right? Where on the one hand, we looked at what would it look like where I already have like preconceived ideas about the data set. And in this case, I have no idea. So let's see. It would be interesting because I believe there are health kind of related statistics here. Just to ask as it pertains to health spending and outcomes, temporal trends, lagged effects, comparative strength across different health indicators, and bids of divergence. Okay, interesting. So health expenditure hasn't really increased much over the years, is what it seems like. Wow, I'm surprised that we are probably looking at the right index value of spending. And yeah, it hasn't really increased all that much. And health spending moved together clearly in long run levels, but much less convincingly in year-to-year changes. Yeah, that's fair. I would expect, healthcare expenditure to lag a little bit, right? It takes some time for expenditure to translate into outcomes. Co-trending, weak media tracking over, I would imagine, right? It's not easy to like change life expectancy, and the data kind of reveals that with the delays rather than instantly. That makes sense, right? So if you think about it, your life expectancy is not only a function of whether the government spends on health, right? It has to do with your income as well. It'd be used together with other evidence to make a case for whether the right type of health expenditures have been taking place. It's like a really good insight, and it would have taken a lot of time to glean the insight that I just got in a couple of minutes, especially in kind of also underscoring what it can't say, right? Meaning what the limitations are, because it's really easy to make naive interpretations from, the results of random regression. This is very careful and, the things that can be reasonably attributed to the variables in question. In this case, that happens to be, healthcare spending, right? I think it's a very calculated and measured interpretation, which is exactly how you want to be. You don't want to be attributing benefits to like wrong variables. Yeah, that's great. I think it's really amazing that something like this exists already for both my work and analyses. This is like a really good tool, especially I think also for researchers, right? Meaning it takes a lot of work to ask the right questions. This is really powerful. And I think tools like this will fundamentally kind of change how we get trained as economists or statisticians, meaning, I no longer need to focus on these mechanical aspects of data analysis and instead focus on looking at the right thing. And it's already doing a really good job at even the assumptions and judgment, right? So it's like super useful as a tool.